Why do airplanes avoid flying over Tibet? The answer to this question might shock you. It all has to do with a special burial rite that curses these places located at an altitude of 16,000 feet. If you have a weak heart, it's better not to watch this video until the end. This unique highland area is shrouded in terrifying secrets and mysteries. The inhabitants of Tibet, living in this unparalleled land, have an ancient history dating back to 127 BC. During the 7th and 8th centuries, the Tibetan state expanded its territories, covering parts of Nepal and India. Thanks to strong relations with the latter, Buddhism came to this area hidden from prying eyes, replacing practices of human sacrifice, cannibalism, and devil worship. From these times, Tibet inherited Tibetan ritual instruments made from human remains. For example, the damaru, a double-headed drum made from 2 skulls, the kangling, a trumpet made from a human femur, is used to call spirits. Additionally, there is the kapala, a skull bowl intended for offerings, such as herbs or flowers. Terrifying. However, the introduction of Buddhism among Tibetans led to the development of deep respect for its principles of peace and enlightenment from the 7th to the 9th century. This facilitated a rejection of military expansion aspirations and helped establish diplomatic ties with Mongolian tribes. In the 13th century, the position of the Dalai Lama was introduced, with the Mongols providing military support and Tibetan lamas offering Mongolian leaders spiritual and moral justification for their rule. In 1642, Tibet became a spiritual nation, focusing on Buddhist education and protected by the Manchu Emperor. The British invasion in 1904 and subsequent events, including the 1909 Revolution and the Declaration of Independence in 1912, could not stop China's attempts to reassert its influence in 1951, leading to widespread repression against the Tibetan people. As a result, most of Tibet was annexed by China, and the remaining territory became known as the Tibetan Autonomous Region. Despite the difficulties in its history, Tibet's economic development continues, reaching a gross domestic product of 26.5 billion yuan, 3.2 billion in 2022, and a GDP per capita of 8,685 in 2012. When planning a visit to Tibet, it is important to familiarize yourself with its specific rules. For a tourist trip to Tibet, booking through a specialized Tibetan travel agency is required, as only they can issue the necessary permit. Also, due to the lack of access to public transport for foreign guests, tours in Tibet are possible exclusively as part of organized groups. This requirement by local authorities is deliberately aimed at preserving the vulnerable ecosystem of Tibet. This is not just a travel permit, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Airplanes do not fly over this region. It may shock you, but pilots are afraid to fly over Tibet not only because of the monstrously high mountains, which are very easy to encounter. They fear Tibet as a cursed place because of the sky burial ritual. There is a belief that this is related to frequent emergencies, such as engine failure or cabin depressurization. The ritual looks like this. When a Tibetan dies, their body is placed in a sitting position, and it sits for 24 hours, while a lama reads prayers from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. These prayers are intended to help the soul's progress through the 49 levels of Bardo, the state between death and rebirth. 3 days after death, a close friend of the deceased carries him on his back to the burial site. The undertaker makes many incisions on the body and yields the body to birds. Vultures do the main part of the work, eating all the flesh. Then, the undertaker collects and crushes the bones on a special flat stone and feeds it all to the birds. The body is destroyed without a trace. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is believed that this makes it easier for the soul to leave the body to find a new one. Tibetans believe that everyone should see the sky burial ritual at least once in their life to realize, feel the transience and ephemerality of life. Moreover, there are many taboos on the process of sky burials in Tibet. Strangers are not allowed to attend the ceremony, as Tibetans believe it will bring negative consequences for the ascent of souls. Therefore, visitors must respect this custom and stay away from funerals. Family members are also not allowed to be at the burial site. Another rule in Tibet is never to touch the shoulders or heads of Tibetans. This is considered rudeness because in Buddhism, they are sacred. Tibetans may extend their hands and greet each other, but they never touch the shoulders. Instead, they nod and exchange pleasantries before saying goodbye. There are also several rules regarding dining etiquette. You need to accept food or drinks with both hands to express respect. Never turn the bowl upside down, as this is only done to denote dead people. And never stretch out your legs where the soles of your feet are facing another person. The social etiquette you need to remember in Tibet is never to whistle indoors or at night because Tibetans believe you will attract spirits or ghosts. Another rule that may shock you is that sometimes Tibetans may show their tongue when greeting each other. This is because a black tongue is a sign of demons, and it's a way to prove that they are not the devil. But now, let's talk about the intimate. It is important to note that Buddhist monks, following the Vinaya, the monastic code of discipline, typically adhere to strict vows of celibacy. This means complete abstention from sexual activity as part of their spiritual practice and pursuit of enlightenment. However, this is strange. If they adhere to such, how do they reproduce? Of course, there are women in Tibet. They wear traditional attire that reflects their cultural heritage and is adapted to the high-altitude conditions. The chuba, a long tunic worn with a belt, stands out among traditional clothing for its versatility and beauty. Silver jewelry with turquoise and coral, as well as intricate hairstyles and headwear, not only adorn but also carry spiritual significance, indicating the wearer's marital status or origin. Preserving these traditions underscores Tibetan women's deep respect for their heritage and identity. Tibetan matrimonial customs are distinguished by their traditionality and diversity, depending on regional and cultural peculiarities. Arranged marriages, where the choice of spouse is left to parents or family elders, remain a common practice, emphasizing the importance of family ties and social compatibility of partners. Interesting traditions such as exchange marriage and polygamy or polyandry in some communities highlight economic and social strategies for preserving family property. Wedding ceremonies in Tibet include a series of rituals and rites, with blessings from lamas and the exchange of kata scarves, symbolizing respect and blessings for the new union. Since the Chinese occupation in the 1950s, Tibet has undergone significant social and political changes. The introduction of communist ideology and attempts to integrate Tibetan society into a broader Chinese context have elicited mixed reactions among Tibetans, many of whom feel their cultural and religious identity is under threat. Tibet is also known for one of the world's most dangerous pilgrimage routes, the pilgrimage to Mount Kailash. Every year, thousands of pilgrims hope to cleanse their past and gain fortune by overcoming physical and mental trials on their way to the mountain, believed to possess ancient spiritual power. The pilgrimage requires crossing an altitude of 5,000 meters and passing through the Dromala Pass at 5,630 meters. Many have died on this journey due to the inability to acclimatize to high altitudes and poor weather conditions. The Tibetan tourism industry draws attention to local hot springs, serving as a way to cope with the cold temperatures due to the region's high elevation. However, before plunging into geothermal pools, caution is advised as Tibetan snakes, hibernating near the sources, may inhabit the waters. Bathing in hot springs can be dangerous and lead to serious injuries due to the high water temperature and potential presence of harmful bacteria. Another dangerous region of Tibet is the Potala Pass, through which many Tibetans have attempted to flee to Nepal and then to India in search of protection from persecution. Crossing the Himalayas was extremely dangerous due to the risk of frostbite and altitude sickness at elevations above 5,800 meters. Chinese border guard surveillance made escape attempts too risky, and since 2009, such attempts have virtually ceased. Despite its complex history and contemporary challenges, Tibet remains a region rich in cultural and spiritual heritage. Hopes remain that Tibet can overcome these dark aspects of its past and present to thrive in the future.